"Don't you ever go near that house again, Amara? Do you hear me?" Her mother's voice had trembled through the phone only minutes earlier. The wind carried the scent of rain and rust. Amara wiped her palms against her jeans, staring at the iron gate that guarded the Langford estate. Its bars were tall and black, curved like thorns and streaked with age. Every child in Savannah had heard stories about what lay beyond them, about the billionaire's haunted mansion, the boy no one ever saw, and the music that sometimes echoed at night when the city was quiet. She knew she shouldn't have been there, but Amara had no choice. The diner's bills were late again, and when her boss mentioned that the Langfords needed a replacement maid, she said yes before she even thought about it. Now she stood before the gate. Everyone else crossed themselves around. Thunder cracked. The sky broke open, spilling rain like it meant to wash the world clean. Amara pulled her hood tighter and pushed the gate. It groaned loud enough to wake ghosts. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she walked the long driveway lined with ancient oaks. Lightning flashed, lighting up the mansion ahead, a gray palace of marble and glass, perched on the hill like it was built to look down on the living. Each step forward felt heavier, as if the ground itself tried to warn her back. But hunger and fear of eviction were louder than superstition. When she reached the entrance, a maid in a black uniform waited, eyes cold and hollow. "New girl?" the woman asked, barely moving her lips. Amara nodded. "Rule 1, the maid said. You clean. You don't talk. Especially not to him." Him? Amara wanted to ask, but the maid had already turned and vanished down the hallway. Inside, the air smelled like polished wood and old secrets. Portraits of the Langford family stared down from the walls, faces painted with money and sorrow. The rain drummed hard against the windows as if trying to get in. Her mother's warning replayed in her mind. But as she looked up at the grand staircase spiraling into shadow, something in her chest, curiosity, defiance, maybe fate, pushed her to take another step. Because even if she didn't know it yet, that was the last moment her life would ever feel ordinary. Somewhere above her, behind a closed door, a single piano note rang through the house, soft, lonely, and human. The next morning the rain had stopped, but the mansion still felt wet, like grief soaked into its walls. Amara followed the head maid through the halls, carrying a bucket and a rag. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, breaking the silence no one dared disturb. The rooms were too big, too perfect, like something designed for people who didn't touch things. Everywhere she looked, she felt watched. Not by people, but by the house itself. The portraits, the gold-framed mirrors, the tall doors that always seemed half open. Even the chandeliers seemed to tilt slightly, as if listening. The Langfords were old money, so old their name appeared in Savannah's founding records. But after the fire 5 years ago, the family stopped hosting parties. The father, Mr. Langford, traveled constantly for business. The staff whispered he was trying to outrun something. His son, Elliot, hadn't been seen since. Amara dusted the grand piano in the main hall, its keys sealed shut under glass. Someone had covered it with a silk cloth as if to bury it. She stared for a moment, fingers itching to lift the cover. "Don't," the head maid said sharply from behind her. Amara jumped. The woman's eyes were flat. "That instrument belongs to the son. You'll never see him, but you'll hear him. Don't go near the east wing when you do." Amara nodded quickly, but inside her chest, curiosity stirred like a live wire. Later that evening, after most of the staff retired, she walked the empty halls alone. The lights flickered, and the house hummed faintly as though breathing. The thunder outside rolled again, low, distant, familiar. She paused at a window overlooking the gardens. The sky was bruised purple, and lightning illuminated the far side of the estate, the east wing. For just a second she thought she saw someone there. A shadow sitting near a window, head bowed over a piano. Then the light blinked out. Amara rubbed her eyes. Maybe it was just the storm. Maybe it was her nerves. But as she turned to leave, a sound reached her ears, faint but unmistakable. A piano key. Then another. Then a melody so sad, so human, that it pulled at the softest part of her heart. That melody was coming from the East Wing, the one every servant was told to stay away from. The melody grew clearer with every step she took. Amara's heart thudded as she moved down the narrow corridor, her flashlight beam shaking over portraits half-eaten by shadows. The East Wing smelled different, dustier, colder, like a place that time forgot. The music wasn't perfect. Notes stumbled, paused, started again. Whoever played wasn't showing off. They were trying to remember how to feel. She reached a door slightly ajar. Warm yellow light spilled through the crack. Her breath fogged as she pushed it open. Inside, the room was filled with gold light and dust motes dancing like fireflies. A grand piano stood in the center, and at it sat a boy no older than 19. His skin was pale, his hair messy, and his blue-gray eyes caught hers the instant she entered. He froze. The music died mid-note. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice cold and clipped, though his hands trembled slightly over the keys. Amara opened her mouth, but words failed. She took in the wheelchair, the blanket covering his legs, the quiet ache that filled the space between them. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I heard you playing." Elliot's gaze softened for half a heartbeat, then hardened again. "You're the new maid." She nodded. He turned back to the piano. "Then you know the rule. You clean. You don't talk." Amara hesitated. "Then why are you talking to me?" His fingers stilled. The question hung in the air like a dare. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock. He looked up slowly, eyes sharp. "Because you didn't leave." That answer sent a chill through her spine. She could have apologized. She could have run. But instead, she did something reckless, something no one else in that house had ever done. She stepped closer and sat beside him. For a second, he looked stunned, as if no one had been near him in years. Her voice came out soft. "What happened to you?" He turned to her with a look so haunted, so raw, it made her throat tighten. "You don't want to know." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the air between them. Then, as if the house itself exhaled, a distant door slammed somewhere in the mansion. Elliot's shoulders tensed. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. "You need to go," he whispered. "If he finds you here, he'll make you disappear." The storm had passed, but the air inside the mansion still felt like it hadn't exhaled. Amara couldn't stop thinking about what Elliot had said. "If he finds you here, he'll make you disappear." She spent the morning in silence, folding linens that smelled like bleach and lavender. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump. She tried not to look toward the East Wing, but her eyes betrayed her every time she passed that hallway. By noon, she caught the head maid watching her. "You went where you shouldn't last night," the woman said, her voice flat. Amara froze. No, I didn't." The maid's eyes narrowed. "I've worked here 15 years. I know when that piano plays. And I know when he stops." They stared at each other for a moment too long. Finally, the maid looked away, lowering her voice. "You seem kind, girl. If you want to keep your kindness and your life, you'll forget you ever heard that music." Then she walked away, leaving Amara shaken. But she couldn't forget. That sound, those fragile, trembling notes, had burned themselves into her heart. That evening, Amara returned to her small room near the laundry hall. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the worn photo on her nightstand. Her and her mother outside their old diner, arms around each other, smiles wide and tired. Her mother's words echoed again. Don't go near that house. She whispered into the dark. You knew something, didn't you, Mama? The house answered with silence. The next morning she took a chance. During her break, she sneaked back to the east wing. The door to Elliot's room was closed this time, but she heard movement inside. The faint scrape of a chair, the soft click of piano keys being tested. She knocked once. No answer. She knocked again, then his voice, distant but clear. You're stubborn. Amara smiled despite her fear. You didn't say I couldn't visit. You said I shouldn't. The door opened a few inches, just enough for her to see him. His face was pale under the morning light, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness. You shouldn't be here, he repeated. And yet here I am, she said softly. A long pause. Then, quietly, you remind me of her. Amara blinked. Who? My sister, he said, and for the first time she saw something raw flicker behind his calm grief. She used to sneak into my room when I couldn't sleep. She said music made nightmares quieter. He looked at the piano, then back at her. But she's gone now. Amara stepped closer, her heart twisting. I'm sorry. He nodded once. Everyone says that. But no one ever asks how she's gone. She hesitated. Then how? He met her eyes. Because my father made it happen. Her breath caught. The air thickened between them. Before she could speak, he turned back to the piano and played a slow, aching tune that felt like a confession. Amara listened until the song ended, afraid to move, afraid to break the spell. When he finally looked up, there were tears he didn't bother to hide. Now you know why the house feels haunted, he said. It's because it is. And for the first time, Amara wondered if she'd stepped into a mansion or a graveyard. Amara didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the mansion sounded like a whisper meant only for her. The next morning, she saw the head maid whispering to a man in a black suit near the garden. He wore sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. When he turned, Amara caught the flash of a gun under his coat. She looked away quickly, pretending to sweep. The Langfords were rich, but this felt darker than money. At lunch, she brought Elliot a tray of soup and bread. He didn't look surprised to see her this time. You keep showing up, he said. I'm a fast learner. He gave a small, almost reluctant smile. My father would fire you for less. She shrugged. Your father isn't here. Elliot's eyes flicked toward the window. He's always here. Amara frowned. You mean? Before she could finish, footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy, precise. She froze. Elliot's face went pale. Hide, he hissed. Amara ducked behind a curtain just as the door opened. A tall man in a dark suit entered. His hair was silver, his jaw sharp, his presence enough to chill the air. Still playing, son? His voice was low, controlled, like a knife. Elliot didn't answer. The man stepped closer. Music won't fix you. You know that, don't you? I don't need fixing, Elliot said quietly. His father's tone sharpened. You're a Langford. And Langfords don't beg for pity. Elliot's hands tightened on the wheelchair armrests. Is that what you called it when you locked me away? Amara's heart pounded. Mr. Langford leaned closer. I did what I had to do to protect this family's name. You should thank me for not doing worse. The words hung in the air like poison. Then, as calmly as he entered, the man turned and left. Amara waited until his footsteps faded before stepping out. Elliot didn't look up. His hands were trembling. She touched his arm gently. I'm sorry you have to live like this. He whispered, You don't understand. I can't leave. You won't let me. Not since. He stopped himself. Since what? She asked. Elliot met her eyes and she saw it, the glint of something metallic under his sleeve. A chain. a literal chain, wrapped around his wrist and hidden beneath his clothes. "Since I tried to run," he said. And when he lifted his sleeve, Amara saw the scar that proved he was telling the truth. It rained again that night, as if the sky wept for the mansion. Amara lay awake, listening to the storm beat against the windows. The image of the chain haunted her. The idea that a boy with everything money could buy was living like a prisoner in his own home. She got up, unable to stand it anymore. When she reached his door, the lights were still on. Elliot sat by the window, staring at the rain. The piano sat silent beside him. He turned as she entered. "You shouldn't risk coming here again. Then stop giving me reasons to." He almost smiled. "You're brave. Or foolish. Maybe both." For a long moment they just sat there, listening to the rain. Finally Amara said, "Tell me the truth. Why did he chain you?" Elliot hesitated. His eyes darted to the window, to the storm, then back to her. "Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to," he said. "The night my sister died, I saw how it really happened." Her breath hitched. "It wasn't an accident," he continued. "It was staged. My father wanted her silence about the foundation funds he'd stolen. She threatened to expose him. So his voice cracked. He made sure she never spoke again." Amara felt sick. "And you?" "I tried to run. Tried to tell someone. He caught me before I made it off the property. Since then he's kept me here. No one outside these walls knows I'm still alive." Lightning flared, painting his face in white light. For the first time, Amara saw both the boy he was and the prisoner he'd become. She whispered, "You don't deserve this. No one ever said I did." She leaned closer. "Then I'll help you." Elliot's eyes widened. "You can't. He'll destroy you." "Let him try," she said quietly. "I'm not afraid." He studied her face, searching for something, fear, doubt, anything. When he found none, his voice softened. "Then promise me," he said. "If I disappear again, you won't stop looking." "I promise." Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing the storm building inside the Langford estate. And neither of them noticed the red light blinking quietly in the corner, the mansion's security camera, recording every word. The next morning, Amara woke with a strange unease in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The Langford estate was always quiet, but that day the silence felt heavier, almost deliberate. When she entered the dining hall, she noticed something new. A small red light blinked above the chandelier. She frowned. Cameras weren't supposed to be in the servants' quarters, yet now one faced directly toward the hallway leading to Elliot's wing. Her pulse quickened. At lunch she caught the head maid again. "When did they put up cameras?" The woman didn't meet her eyes. "You ask too many questions. That's not an answer." The maid leaned close enough for Amara to smell the coffee on her breath. "If you value your mother's safety, stop talking." Amara froze. "My mother?" But the maid walked away, her silence more terrifying than any threat. That evening she brought food to Elliot again, though every step down the east hall felt like walking through invisible fire. He looked up when she entered. "You came." "They're watching us," she said. He nodded slowly, almost sadly. "They always have." Amara pointed to the corner. "There's a camera." Elliot's eyes flicked toward it, then back to her. "That one's not new. But there's one they don't know about." Her brow furrowed. "What?" He motioned for her to follow. From under the piano he pulled out a small, dusty box. Inside were old cassette tapes, each labeled with dates from years ago. "These are from before the fire," he said quietly. "My mother hid them. She used to record my father's business calls." Amara looked at the box like it might burn her. "You think there's proof?" "I don't think," he said. I know. She swallowed hard. Then let's play them. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. The static-filled tape began to play, and a man's voice filled the air, cold, controlled, unmistakable. Mr. Langford, if she talks, we lose everything. Unknown voice, and if she doesn't? Mr. Langford, then she'll have an accident. Amara's stomach dropped. She stopped the tape, her hands shaking. That's your father. Elliot nodded. And that was the night before she died. Outside the window, thunder cracked again as if echoing the horror of what they'd just heard. Neither of them noticed the shadow moving in the hallway, the one that had been listening the whole time. The next morning, Amara noticed something strange. Her cleaning cart was moved, her supplies rearranged. Someone had been in her room. She told herself it was nothing until she found the cassette box missing. Her heart stopped. She ran down the corridor to Elliot's room. He was already waiting, pale and tense. They took it, didn't they? She nodded. Every tape. Elliot's jaw tightened. That means they know. Before they could say more, a knock echoed from the door. Both froze. Mr. Langford requests the maid in the red apron, a man's voice called. Amara's stomach turned. That was her. Elliot shook his head urgently. Don't go. I have to, she whispered. She followed the voice down the long marble corridor until she stood before the grand study, Langford's private office. He sat behind a massive oak desk, a portrait of his late wife behind him. His hands were folded neatly, but his eyes were the kind that measured and judged all at once. Miss Amara, isn't it? He said smoothly. She nodded, her throat dry. I hear you've been very curious lately, he said. That's good. Curiosity can be useful. Dangerous too, though. He smiled, but it never reached his eyes. Amara forced her voice steady. I only do what I'm told, sir. I believe you, he said. But sometimes people stumble into places they shouldn't. Like my son's wing. Her breath caught. Sir, He raised a hand. No need to explain. Just remember this. Some doors once opened can't be closed. He leaned forward. And people who open them often disappear. Amara left the room on shaking legs, the sound of his words burning into her mind. When she returned to Elliot, he was gone. His room empty. The piano silent. Elliot, she called, panic rising. Then she saw it, on the piano bench, a folded note in his handwriting. It read only 3 words, he knows everything. And as she read, the sound of boots echoed down the hall, coming straight for her. Mara ran. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear her own footsteps. She darted through the servants' corridor, past laundry bins and broken furniture. The mansion's layout twisted like a maze, and every hallway looked the same. Behind her, voices shouted, "Guards!" She turned a corner and almost collided with the head maid. "Please?" Amara gasped. "Where's Elliot?" The woman's face was pale. "They moved him." "Where?" The maid looked toward the locked cellar door. "Below." Amara didn't think, she ran. The cellar was colder than she expected. The air smelled of earth and iron. At the far end, behind a row of wine racks, she saw movement. Elliot, strapped to his wheelchair, his wrists chained again. She rushed forward, tears burning her eyes. "Elliot." He looked up weakly. "You shouldn't have come." "I promised," she said. "I keep my promises." She searched for the lock but froze when she saw a blinking red light on the wall. A sensor. "Amara, no!" Elliot shouted. Too late. An alarm blared, deafening. Within seconds, the cellar door slammed shut. Heavy footsteps thundered overhead. Elliot's voice broke. "He'll kill you if he finds you here." Amara looked around desperately. She grabbed a metal rod from the corner and struck the chain again and again until it cracked. "Go," she said, helping him up. Elliot's legs trembled but held just enough for him to move. They made it halfway up the stairs before the door swung open. Mr. Langford stood there, expressionless. "I warned you," he said softly. "Now you've forced my hand." The gun in his hand gleamed beneath the cellar light. Time stopped. Amara froze, staring down the barrel of the gun. Her mind raced, but her body wouldn't move. Elliot wheeled forward, positioning himself between her and his father. "Don't." Mr. Langford's voice was eerily calm. "Step aside." "No." The silence stretched. The air crackled with tension. "Elliot," his father said slowly, "you're sick. You've always been sick. And now you've infected her too." Elliot's jaw clenched. "I'm not the sick one." For a moment the older man's eyes flickered, just a crack of something human. Then his finger tightened on the trigger. Bang! The sound split the air. Elliot gasped and fell forward, his chair tipping. Amara screamed. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands trembling. "No, no, no." Blood seeped through his shirt. But he wasn't dead. Not yet. Mr. Langford lowered the gun, breathing hard. "You did this, girl. You brought this on him." Amara looked up, rage burning through her tears. "You'll never bury this. I'll make sure the world knows what you did." Langford smiled coldly. "You think anyone will believe you? You're just a maid." Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing up the stairs. Amara pressed her hands against Elliot's wound, whispering through tears, "Stay with me, please." He opened his eyes weakly. "The tapes, they're not all gone." "Where?" He struggled to speak. "My mother's piano. The bottom key. Press it." Amara stared at him. "I'll come back for you." "You better," he whispered. Then his eyes fluttered closed. And as she ran toward the piano, the mansion lights went out, one by one. The mansion was silent, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that watched. Amara crept through the east wing, the sound of thunder fading behind her. She reached the grand piano, its white keys glinting faintly in the dark. Her hands shook as she pressed the bottom key. Nothing happened. "Come on," she whispered. She pressed harder and heard a faint click. The wooden panel below the keyboard loosened. Inside, wrapped in silk, were 2 small memory cards. Her breath caught. She pocketed them and turned to leave, only to hear the soft whine of an elevator coming to life. Someone else was coming down. Amara ducked behind a column, heart hammering. 2 guards stepped out, murmuring. "Boss said the girl's still in the house. Search everywhere." She waited until they passed, then slipped out the side door and sprinted into the rain. The cold hit her like a slap, but she didn't stop. She had to get out. Had to find help. At the mansion gates, she turned for one last look. The windows blazed with light. For a second she thought she saw a figure, Elliot, watching her from the upper floor. Then the light went out. And just as she reached the road, a pair of headlights flared behind her. The tires screeched on the wet asphalt. Amara dove into the ditch, mud soaking her clothes. The black SUV roared past, its tinted windows flashing under the lightning. They were hunting her. She crawled through the field until she reached the tree line. There, half hidden under the pines, she pulled out the memory cards. They were labeled Security Footage, 2019, and Accounts. Her pulse raced. Proof. But where could she go? The police? Everyone in Savannah knew the Langfords owned the police. Then she remembered someone. Pastor Ruth. The only person who'd ever given her mother mercy when the world didn't. Mara ran. By dawn, she reached the small church on the outskirts of town. The door creaked as she entered, her breath fogging in the cold air. Pastor Ruth looked up from the pews, her eyes widening. "Amara? Please?" Amara panted. "I need your help. They're going to kill him." The older woman took her hands. "Slow down." "Who?" "Elliot Langford. He's alive, but his father." Pastor Ruth's face changed. "Child, you can't say those things out loud. They'll come for you too." Amara pulled out the memory cards. "Not if I show them this." The pastor hesitated, then nodded toward her old computer. "Let's see what we're dealing with." They loaded the first file. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to show fire licking the Langford mansion. In the background, two figures ran, Elliot's sister and Mr. Langford. Then a sudden flash. Amara gasped. "He lit it." Pastor Ruth covered her mouth. "Lord have mercy." Before they could process it, a sharp noise echoed outside, the crunch of tires on gravel. Pastor Ruth's eyes went wide. "They found you." The church lights flickered, and Amara heard the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked outside. The door burst open. Two men in black stormed in, flashlights cutting through the dark. Pastor Ruth shoved Amara toward the back exit. "Go." "But." "Go." Amara sprinted down the narrow hallway, clutching the memory cards to her chest. The men shouted behind her, boots pounding the wooden floor. She burst through the rear door and stumbled into the graveyard behind the church. Rain lashed her face. She ducked behind a marble headstone, holding her breath. One guard's voice cut through the storm. She couldn't have gone far. Another replied, "Boss says bring her alive." Amara gritted her teeth. "Over my dead body." Lightning flashed, revealing a small truck parked by the church shed. She recognized it, the pastor's. The keys were still in the ignition. She bolted. Gunfire exploded behind her. Bullets tore through the rain. She ducked, jumped into the truck and slammed her foot on the gas. The tires screeched as she tore down the muddy road, the church shrinking behind her. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, mud-streaked, terrified, and furious. Pastor Ruth's voice still echoed in her ears. "Some truths are worth dying for." She didn't plan to die. Not until she brought the truth to light. And as she drove toward town, blue and red lights appeared in the distance. Police cars waiting. Amara slowed, relief flooding her chest. Police. Maybe someone had listened. But then she noticed something. Every car was parked facing her, blocking both lanes. The officers didn't step forward. They just stood waiting. Her instinct screamed. She slammed the truck into reverse, but before she could turn, another SUV appeared behind her. Trap. One officer raised a megaphone. "Step out of the vehicle, hands where we can see them." She obeyed slowly. Rain poured down, washing blood and dirt from her face. The officer stepped closer, lowering the megaphone. And when the light hit his face, her stomach turned. It wasn't a cop. It was one of Langford's men, wearing a stolen uniform. He smiled. "Boss says hello." Amara backed away, gripping the memory cards tighter. The man lunged. She swung the door open, catching him across the jaw, and ran. Sirens wailed now, real ones this time. But she didn't stop to look. She dove into the woods, vanishing into the dark. Behind her, the false officer shouted into a radio, "She's got the evidence. Take her down." Amara ran until her lungs screamed. Branches tore at her arms, but she didn't care. Every step was survival. She clutched the cards so tightly they dug into her palm. If I can just reach someone outside Savannah, she thought, someone who's not afraid of his money. Her foot slipped on the mud and she fell hard. The cards flew from her hand, one landing near a stream. She scrambled toward it, just as headlights flashed again through the trees. A familiar voice called out her name, Elliot's. Amara froze. The voice came again, hoarse but unmistakable. Amara. She turned, and there he was, Elliot Langford, alive. Pale, drenched, standing with the help of a metal cane. She ran to him, tears and disbelief colliding. How? He gave a shaky laugh. Didn't think I'd die that easy. But I saw. The bullet missed my heart. The nurse my father bribed, she didn't finish the job. She let me go. Amara couldn't stop trembling. We have to move. They're everywhere. He nodded. I know. But I also know where to hurt him most. She frowned. What do you mean? Elliot pulled a folded envelope from his coat. My mother's will. It names me as heir, and exposes everything he stole. But we need both, her will and your footage. She handed him the cards. Then let's finish this. He looked at her, something fierce and alive in his eyes. You're not afraid anymore, are you? She shook her head. Not after what he's done. They turned toward the highway, the rain falling harder now. Elliot said softly, if we can reach the Savannah Tribune before dawn, we have a chance. A car engine roared in the distance. Elliot's eyes widened. He's coming. Amara grabbed his hand. Then let's run. They disappeared into the dark, two fugitives against an empire. And as they vanished into the storm, Mr. Langford's convoy turned onto the same road, closing in fast. The night never seemed to end. Amara and Elliot stumbled through the soaked highway, shoes squelching in the mud. The wind howled around them, drowning out their thoughts. They were almost at the outskirts of the city. The glowing skyline of Savannah shimmered through the rain like a false promise. Elliot stopped to catch his breath, leaning on his cane. His skin was pale and every breath came heavy. You need to rest, Amara said. He shook his head. We don't have time. He'll send more men. Amara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. They were running on adrenaline and fear. Nothing else. They found shelter beneath an abandoned gas station awning. Amara peeled off her soaked hoodie, shivering. She looked at the memory cards, still wrapped in plastic. What if this isn't enough? She whispered. Elliot looked up. Then we make it enough. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Rain pattered on the tin roof. Amara's voice broke. You could have left me. Why didn't you? He smiled faintly. Because you're the only person who ever saw me as more than a name. Her heart clenched. But before she could answer, a shadow moved near the pumps. Elliot noticed too. He grabbed her arm. We have to go. They slipped behind the building, crouching low. Two SUVs rolled past, beams slicing through the dark. A voice barked from a radio. Search every block. They can't be far. Elliot whispered, he's tightening the circle. Amara nodded grimly. Then we go where he won't. Where's that? She met his gaze. Back home. Because where it all started might be the only place left to hide. By sunrise, they reached the broken sign that once read Riverview Estates. Now it was just rust and weeds. Amara's old neighborhood hadn't changed, except maybe gotten worse. Kids still played barefoot in puddles. Houses leaned tiredly against each other. And yet this was the first place she'd felt safe in days. They slipped into her mother's old house, long abandoned. The door creaked like it remembered them. Inside, dust floated in the sunlight. The couch was gone, but her mother's photo, half faded, still hung crooked on the wall. Amara reached for it, tracing the edges. She died believing no one would ever listen to the poor. Elliot looked around quietly. She'd be proud of you. Amara turned to him. She'd be terrified for me. They sat on the bare floor, spreading out what they had. The memory cards, the will, and a dying phone. Elliot sighed. The Tribune won't believe us without backup. We need a voice they can't silence. Amara thought for a moment. What about your uncle? The one your father exiled? Elliot's eyes flickered. He's in Atlanta. Then we go to him. He nodded slowly. It's risky. Everything's risky. They rested for a few hours, but the peace didn't last. By evening, Amara noticed movement through the cracked blinds, men in suits scanning the neighborhood. Elliot tensed. He found us again. How? The tracker, he said bitterly. In my cane. Without hesitation, Amara snatched the cane and slammed it against the wall, breaking it in half. A tiny chip rolled out. But it was too late. Engines roared outside. And before they could run, the front door burst open with a blast that shook the house. Smoke filled the room. Amara coughed, dragging Elliot toward the back door, but armed men flooded in. Hands up, one shouted. Elliot stepped in front of her, raising his hands. She has nothing to do with this. A blow struck him across the face. He fell hard, blood splattering the dusty floor. Amara screamed, but a guard grabbed her arms. You should have stayed quiet, girl. They were shoved into separate vehicles, engines revving through the storm. Amara fought the whole way, but the more she struggled, the harder they held. She caught one last glimpse of Elliot's terrified eyes before the doors slammed shut. When her blindfold came off, she was back at the mansion, the same one she'd escaped. Only this time she was in the basement. The room was cold, stone walls lined with cameras. Mr. Langford sat behind a sleek table, calm as a priest. He smiled. You've caused quite the mess, Miss Brooks. Amara glared. You killed your own son. He leaned back, amused. He was weak. I gave him everything, and he chose pity over power. She spat at the floor. You're a monster. He chuckled. No, my dear. I'm America. You just don't like what it looks like. Her stomach turned. Langford slid one of the memory cards across the table. You think this changes anything? I own the courts, the news, the law. Amara lifted her chin. Then I'll burn it all. His smile faded. You'll do nothing. Because when I'm done, no one will even remember you existed. He nodded to a guard. Take her to the docks. And for the first time, Amara truly thought she might die. The waves slapped against the pier, cruel and endless. Amara's hands were bound, her hair whipping in the wind. Two men stood beside her, silent. The boat's engine idled, ready. She stared at the black water, her mind flashing through faces. Her mother's laugh, Pastor Ruth's voice, Elliot's eyes. Any last words? One of the men asked. Yeah, she said, voice trembling but steady. Tell your boss he raised the wrong son. The man frowned. What? Before he could react, headlights flared from the hill. A truck roared down, engine screaming. It slammed into the dock fence, scattering the guards. Elliot stumbled out, still bleeding, still alive. Run, he shouted. Amara kicked one guard in the knee and threw herself into the water. Cold ripped through her, stealing her breath. Above, gunfire exploded. Elliot ducked behind the truck, returning fire with a pistol he'd stolen. The dock burst into chaos. Amara surfaced, gasping, clinging to the side of a wooden beam. She saw Elliot take a hit to the shoulder but keep firing, his face pale but determined. Then one of the guards raised his weapon behind him. Amara screamed, Elliot! The shot rang out. He fell. The world blurred into rain and firelight as Amara dragged herself to shore, sobbing. She crawled to him, shaking him, begging. Don't do this. Don't leave me. His lips moved faintly. Finish it, for both of us. His hand went still. Amara's scream tore through the storm. And as the sun rose, she stood over the body of the boy who'd changed everything. vowing to end his father's empire once and for all. The morning after the storm, Savannah was quiet. Too quiet. Amara buried Elliot near the marshlands, where the sun broke over the reeds like fire. She used her bare hands, each scoop of dirt mixing with tears and rain. There was no priest, no family, no words grand enough. Only a promise. "I'll finish what you started," she whispered. The world didn't answer, but something inside her changed. For the first time she didn't feel afraid, just certain. She searched the wreckage near the dock and found his backpack. Inside, his broken phone, a lighter, and one memory card he must have hidden. Her heart stopped. It wasn't the same one Langford showed her. This one had a different label. Fire Truth/Final Copy. She plugged it into a stranger's computer at a roadside internet cafe. The screen flickered, then played. Elliot's mother arguing with Langford in his study. The timestamp was hours before the fire. "You're stealing from your own foundation," she shouted. Langford's voice was calm. "You wouldn't understand." Then the footage caught him pushing a candle off the desk. Flames erupted. Her screams filled the air. Amara covered her mouth. This was it. The truth. She copied it to the cloud and whispered, "You can't bury this anymore." And when she left that cafe, a black SUV was already waiting outside. The SUV doors opened. Two men stepped out, Langford's security. Amara darted across the street, heart pounding. Cars honked, brakes screeched. She sprinted into an alley, weaving through trash bins. Bullets cracked the walls behind her. She turned a corner and nearly collided with a familiar face, Pastor Ruth. "Child, what in God's name?" "No time." Amara gasped. "They found me." Ruth's eyes widened. "Come with me." She pulled her through a side door into the church basement. The smell of candles and old wood hit them. Amara collapsed, shaking. Ruth knelt beside her. "You're bleeding." "It's not mine," Amara whispered. She showed her the footage. Ruth watched in silence, her face going from disbelief to fury. "That man killed his wife." Amara nodded. "And framed his son." Ruth took her hand. "Then let's make sure the world knows." They spent the night sending copies of the video to local reporters, activists, and online whistleblowers. Every few minutes, Amara expected the door to burst open. But it didn't. Not yet. By dawn, the footage was everywhere, uploaded, mirrored, unstoppable. Langford's empire had cracks now, and she was the hammer. But empires don't fall quietly, and Langford still had one move left to play. By noon, every TV in Savannah played the same headline: "Billionaire accused of killing his wife, cover-up exposed." Amara watched from the church steps, her hoodie pulled low. People stopped on sidewalks, murmuring. Langford went on live television that evening. His face looked carved from stone. He denied everything. Called the video deepfake propaganda and racial manipulation. Amara's fists clenched. He was using her race as a weapon against her. Then came the next blow: arrest warrants. Not for him but for her. Amara Brooks, wanted for blackmail, extortion, and hacking. Her stomach twisted. Ruth slammed the radio. "He's turning it around. You need to disappear, girl." Amara shook her head. "No. I need to finish this." That night, she broke into the Langford mansion one last time. The estate was silent. Empty. She moved through it like a ghost, remembering every room she'd once cleaned. In the study, she found a safe behind the portrait of Mrs. Langford. Inside, a ledger full of offshore transfers, bribes, and payoffs. She photographed every page, heart racing. Then she heard the floorboards creak behind her. Langford's voice, low and cold: "I hoped it wouldn't come to this." He was holding a gun and smiling. Langford's footsteps echoed through the study. Amara stood her ground, camera still recording. "You killed your wife," she said. "You destroyed your son." He tilted his head. "I built a legacy. You wouldn't understand what it takes." "Yeah," she said, voice trembling. "Because I still have a soul." He laughed, raising the gun. "You think the world will believe you over me? You're nothing." Amara slowly reached for her pocket. "Maybe not. But they'll believe him." She tapped her phone. The live stream was already rolling. Thousands were watching. Langford froze. "You're on camera," she whispered. "Smile for your empire." He lunged forward. The gun went off. Glass shattered. The phone clattered to the ground, still streaming, showing him hovering over her. "Confess," she hissed. "Say it." Langford's mask cracked. "Fine." She wanted to leave me. She was ruining everything. His voice thundered through the live stream. Seconds later, sirens wailed outside. Amara lay bleeding, smiling faintly. "Looks like you're trending." Langford's face twisted. "You." The doors burst open. Police stormed in. They dragged him away as Amara slipped into unconsciousness, whispering one word: "Elliot." And when she woke up, the world had already changed. Amara woke to the steady beeping of a heart monitor. White walls. The smell of antiseptic. Bandages on her arm. For a second she didn't know where she was, or if she was still alive. Then a soft voice: "You're safe now." She turned her head. Pastor Ruth sat beside her, eyes full of tears and pride. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "He's in custody." The whole world saw it. Amara blinked, trying to sit up. Langford denied everything at first, but they found the offshore accounts, the recordings. "He's finished." Amara stared at the window, sunlight spilling through the blinds. She couldn't process it. For so long she'd been running, bleeding, hiding. Now there was peace. A heavy, strange peace that didn't feel real. She thought of Elliot. The way he smiled when he played piano. The way he'd said, "Finish it for both of us." Tears welled up again. "I did, Elliot. We did." Ruth took her hand. "He'd be proud." The nurse came in with a newspaper. The headline read, "Justice at Last. Langford Empire Collapses After Murder Confession." Below it, a photo, Amara's livestream still frame, blurry but powerful. She wasn't invisible anymore. Cliffhanger, but even victories can leave ghosts, and one was still waiting for her at the mansion. 2 weeks later, Amara walked through the Langford estate one last time. The police tape fluttered in the breeze, but the house was quiet now, emptied of power, stripped of secrets. She moved room by room, touching the furniture she used to clean. Every step echoed with memory. Then in the east wing she heard it, faint but real. A piano note. Her heart stopped. She followed the sound into the music room. The grand piano sat covered in dust. But the keys were pressed. She reached out, trembling. "Elliot." Silence. Then another note played, soft like a whisper in the air. Amara's breath caught. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe something else. She sat at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys. Slowly she began to play the melody she'd first heard that day, the lonely song that had drawn her in. Halfway through, her tears blurred the keys. But when she looked up, she swore she saw him, just for a second, sitting beside her, smiling. Not broken. Not afraid. Just free. She whispered, "Rest now, Elliot. I'll keep playing." Because she still had one more promise to keep, and the world needed to hear his story. Months passed. Savannah changed. The Langford mansion was converted into a youth arts center. The sign at the gate read, "The Elliott Foundation, for kids who dream differently." Amara stood at the ribbon cutting, wearing a simple dress and trembling hands. Reporters crowded around, flashing cameras. "Amara, what inspired this project?" one asked. She smiled faintly. "A boy who played piano in the dark. He taught me that broken doesn't mean hopeless." The crowd quieted. Inside the center, children with wheelchairs, braces, and hearing aids explored music rooms and art studios. Their laughter filled the hall, light and wild. Pastor Ruth hugged her from behind. "You did it, child." Amara shook her head. "We did. Him too." Later that night, she went live on her channel for the first time. A simple video, no filters, no makeup. Her voice was steady. "This story isn't about money or power. It's about seeing people no one else will. Because sometimes the one act of kindness you're afraid to give is the one that saves a life." The comments flooded in. "You're amazing. Thank you for telling his story. You made me believe again." But before ending the stream, Amara glanced up, and for a heartbeat she heard that same piano melody again. A year later, the mansion gates, once rusted and feared, shone gold in the morning sun. Amara visited every week, leaving flowers at the oak near the lake. The piano room was always open, and children often gathered there to play. One day a young boy asked her, "Miss Amara, do you believe in ghosts?" She smiled softly. "I believe in love that doesn't die." He grinned. "Then maybe that's who's teaching me piano." She laughed, tears glimmering. As she walked away, the camera of her vlog crew panned to the window, where, for a fleeting second, a reflection of a young man in a wheelchair could be seen, hands hovering over invisible keys. The final note of the piano echoed through the halls, blending with the sound of children's laughter outside. You see, some stories don't end where they began. They echo, in every song, every act of courage, every person who chooses to see light where others see loss. And sometimes the most powerful ghosts aren't haunting us, they're guiding us. The years rolled by softly, like a tide retreating after the storm. Amara's face began to appear in classrooms, documentaries, and news specials. She never liked the fame, but she accepted it, because it meant the story lived on. Every time a teacher told their students about the girl who spoke to silence, a part of Elliott was remembered. She'd often visit schools and community centers, standing before rows of children who looked just like her. Brown skin, curious eyes, hearts full of quiet wonder. "I wasn't brave," she told them. "I was scared every single day. But I spoke anyway, because sometimes fear means you're standing where the truth lives." The kids clapped. Some cried. But Amara smiled, not the tight, practiced smile of survival, but one that came from knowing her scars had purpose. That night, as she walked home, she saw posters for an upcoming gala, the Elliott Foundation annual benefit. She'd be speaking there. But deep down, she knew this speech would be her last about the story. It was time to let it rest. And yet, that night, a letter arrived, sealed with the Langford crest, but written in a child's hand. The envelope felt light, like it carried more air than paper. She opened it carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing, a stick-figure boy in a wheelchair and a smiling girl beside him. Beneath it, shaky handwriting read, "Dear Miss Amara, thank you for helping me see that I'm not broken. I can play piano too. Love, Noah, age 8. Amara's hands trembled. She stared at the picture, that bright, simple joy drawn by a child who would never know the weight of the name Langford. She smiled through tears. "That's the echo," she whispered. "That's him." The next evening at the gala, lights shimmered across the hall. Amara stood at the podium, her voice steady but full. "When I first met Elliott, he didn't speak. He just played music that felt like sadness turned into hope. Today that hope has become this, all of you. Every child who dares to dream, even when the world tells them no. Applause thundered through the hall. Pastor Ruth cried quietly in the front row. But Amara didn't linger. She ended with a single line that silenced the room. Never underestimate the power of the voice you almost didn't use. As she left the stage, a young boy approached her, small, nervous, with a tiny brace on his leg. "Miss Amara," he said, "I'm Noah. Can I play something for you?" She nodded. He climbed onto the piano bench, legs swinging. His fingers touched the keys, and when the first few notes rose, Amara froze. It was the same melody, Elliot's song. And for the first time she didn't cry. She just listened. The music swelled through the room like sunlight breaking through stained glass. Noah's small hands moved with surprising grace, the same gentle rhythm Elliot once played. Around them the crowd hushed, strangers, teachers, parents, all caught in the quiet spell of a song born from pain, reborn in hope. Amara's vision blurred. She closed her eyes and felt it, the warmth, the light, the forgiveness. In that moment she realized something simple and powerful. Stories don't end. They pass on, like melodies that choose new players. After the gala, she walked outside into the cool night air. The stars above Savannah shimmered like keys on a piano. She whispered, "You did it, Elliot. You're free now." The wind rustled the trees in response, soft as a sigh. Then, as she turned to leave, a familiar sound drifted through the open window, the last note of the melody, drawn out, pure and endless. She smiled, hands in her pockets, and walked into the night. Sometimes the smallest kindness changes the loudest silence. Sometimes the poorest girl teaches the richest world what love looks like. And sometimes, when the music finally stops, the echo remains. If this story moved you, stay with Slush Stories. Because somewhere out there, another unheard voice is waiting to be seen.